Hi everyone, my name is Maddie and I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA. Today I'll be sharing our work on the impacts of feral cats on island-endemic ringtails. And this work was done in collaboration with the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance and UNAM in Mexico City. As predators, cats wreak havoc on ecosystems. Most of the research on feral cats' impacts focuses on their predation, and rightfully so. They have caused over 60 extinctions of small vertebrates, likely due to the naivete of species to ambush predators. And despite public support of cats, even popular science articles like this one in The Guardian are calling attention to this issue. However, while most of the research on feral cats is on their impacts on prey populations, they can have non-predation impacts as well, like disease transmission, interference, and exploitation competition. These impacts deserve attention because they can affect other predator species, which can have cascading ecosystem effects. Island ecosystems are especially vulnerable to the introduction of new species like feral cats. Oftentimes, prey may not have evolved with predators like them, and competitors may also have not evolved with similar species. Cats are often introduced to these systems by fisherfolk who use them as rodent control or pets, companion animals. These two photos were taken on the Espiritu Santo archipelago in the Gulf of California, Mexico, where we did our field research. Cats were introduced over the past century and continue to be a management concern there. The Espiritu Santo archipelago is a national park in Mexico. 30 years ago, this land was purchased from developers and then became federally protected due to its cultural and biodiversity value. It is the site of one of the oldest known fishhooks made out of seashells, made by the Paredes peoples nearly 10,000 years ago. The terrain here is rocky and the climate is generally arid. These photos were taken just after the brief but intense rainy season. Much of the land is off limits to people, but there are around 20 beaches, some of which are heavily visited by ecotourism agencies. There are no permanent structures or permanent residents, but fisherfolk and tourists do camp in tents or shacks on the beaches. This is the ranger station. The feral cats pose a threat to the many small vertebrates on the islands. The islands are home to 6 endemic mammals, including 4 rodents, a jackrabbit, and a ringtail. Ringtails are small members of the raccoon family that are especially adept at climbing trees and rocks. This ringtail subspecies has been locally named babisuri to distinguish it from other ringtails. This endearing name is emblematic of how unique and appreciated the ringtails are by the local community. While some folks have posited that cats are impacting these species, there have not yet been any studies on their effects. And past efforts to manage cats have been limited due to the difficult terrain and inaccessibility of much of the inland area. Understanding how cats are impacting the community would help managers evaluate their priorities. Interestingly, the ringtail and the feral cat are the only 2 carnivorans on the archipelago, and they don't really have any natural predators. They are quite ecologically similar. The ringtail is often even called the ringtail cat or the miner's cat, but they have some notable differences from feral cats. While ringtails are usually nocturnal, cats are typically crepuscular, especially feral cats on the mainland. Cats also tend to be more carnivorous and larger than ringtails. And given the similarities of these species and their relatively recent introduction, our team wanted to investigate how they interact. On the mainland, ringtails typically avoid other carnivorans because they are small and don't really have strong defenses. It's possible that ringtails retain some anti-predator behaviors, but also possible that they have lost them over evolutionary time. So our team investigated how the feral cats affected ringtail ecology and behavior. To observe wildlife, we set camera traps at 23 sites across 16 access points on the island. They were deployed for 17 months, and we baited them every 2 months with strawberry jam and canned tuna. To supplement our camera trap data, we also distributed surveys to folks who visit the islands often, including Konamp park rangers and ecotourism guides. The surveys collected wildlife observation data for cats and ringtails at the sites, and other data on ecosystem value. I don't have time to report on the majority of our survey findings, but I'm happy to talk about those later. From our camera traps and surveys, we consistently found ringtails at all study sites. We captured over 7,000 ringtail images, including evidence of ringtail reproduction. This is really exciting because ringtails tend to be very elusive, but on the islands, they were pretty easy to find on camera, and we even saw them in person. All of the dots on this map are evidence of ringtails, whether by our camera traps or by the surveys or both. Cats, however, were less cooperative. We detected cats on only 2 camera traps, and they were reported at only 4 sites. So this is likely reflective of low detection probability instead of low abundance. Where we did see cats on camera, they were completely disinterested in the bait and appeared to be afraid of the camera trap sounds. While presence and absence of cats is an imperfect measure of their distribution on the islands, it likely reflects the likelihood of encountering cats at these sites. Next, we characterize the temporal activity of ringtails at sites without cat reports. We found that they become active right around sunset, are consistently active throughout the night, then become less active right around sunrise, and this is consistent with what we find on the mainland. We then compared this temporal activity distribution to that of ringtails at sites with confirmed cat presence. We found that ringtails were more nocturnal at sites with cat reports. Using circular statistics, we determined that this distribution characterized significantly more nocturnal behavior, peaking around midnight. Since mainland feral cats are typically crepuscular, we assume this to be true on the islands as well. If true, this result shows that ringtails shift to become more nocturnal to avoid the crepuscular cats at sites where they co-occur. We wanted to see if we could identify a behavioral mechanism to explain this pattern. We conducted a scent experiment at each site. For our control trial, we baited camera traps and set out 10 milliliters of saline and grass litter. And on experimental nights to represent cat scent, we used a 30-gram clump of cat urine in grass litter. On this camera trap image to the right, you can see a young ringtail investigating the bait on that rock, with the scent treatment sitting to the right on the paper plate. Our camera traps took videos, and we annotated those videos using Boris, and then analyzed a suite of behaviors using linear mixed effects models. Our main result from the experiment was that ringtails were less likely to dig when cat scent was present. During control trials, ringtails were observed digging in about 1/4 of the total observations. In the trials where cat urine was present, they were only observed digging in around 12%. So that means that they were half as likely to dig when the cat urine was present. Ringtails are related to raccoons, and while not quite as nimble, their paws are very dexterous. They can unzip tents, open coolers, and unscrew water bottles. So digging and using their tactile senses is how ringtails investigate their environment. This decline in digging behavior indicates that cat scent decreases ringtails' inclination to explore their surroundings. While ringtails appear to be widespread and abundant on the islands, cats are limiting ringtail activity periods. With our experiment, we identified one of the behavioral mechanisms by which this occurs. Ringtails appear to maintain some anti-predator responses to cat scent, making them less likely to engage in investigative behaviors. We aim for this information to help managers assess their priorities and engage the public with new knowledge about this charismatic species. There are still some unanswered questions in this system. We'd like to understand how these behavioral impacts might affect ringtail fitness. We would also like to investigate how other rodents and jackrabbits are affected by cats, which may indirectly affect the ringtails as well. Lastly, while we surveyed folks who visit the archipelago most frequently, more extensive stakeholder surveys and interviews need to be conducted to carry out management plans with the most benefit to the larger community. Thank you especially to my co-authors and collaborators, and to our funding and other support. You can contact me at my email address, and I'm happy to take any questions there.